Love is here. Being aware. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the idea of conscious communication. When we're really aware, it's easy for us to communicate the love that we are and to see that in each other. But when we're not aware, when we're not conscious, sometimes we bring forth unskillful behavior and unskillful communication. So that's what we're going to talk about today, because when we're in relationship with each other, every single moment we are communicating something, somehow. Even if it's just through the way our eyes catch someone else's eyes. We're always communicating. We're always in that process with each other. And so it's very important for us to be intentional about what we're communicating, to be mindful, to be aware, as Robert Song says. Because what we say and what we do, how we communicate, and how we connect with each other is one of the most important aspects of our being human in the world. And that's the truth. So what I want to talk about today is the idea that really when we communicate with each other, it's a lot more than just the words that we say. It's about listening, it's about speaking, and it's about the beingness that we bring forth whenever we show up. And so, to me, this is the ultimate spiritual practice. How we show up is the ultimate spiritual practice. Because when we're conscious and we know who we are, and we're conscious and we know who everybody else is, when we show up, we're expressing our divinity, and we're seeing that divinity, and we're seeing the activity of God everywhere, no matter what's going on or no matter who shows up. So it requires this mindfulness that lets us examine, am I coming from a place of love, like Robert's song indicated, or am I coming from a place of fear or anger or resentment or whatever else that energy might be? Do I actually have the capacity to bring forth my actions and the words that I speak, the way I communicate with you in a way that doesn't cause harm, that doesn't cause suffering? What I say is we've all got that capacity, and sometimes we forget. We're forgetful. And so our work is to set this intention to be our own best monkey mind and ask ourselves the question, what's my motivation for what I'm going to say? What's my motivation for what I'm going to do? What is the intention that I'm bringing forth in my beingness in this exact moment in time? You know, is this a reflection of the truth of who I am? Is this a reflection of the alignment of my soul with my inner purpose? Is that what I'm reflecting in the way I'm showing up, or the words that I'm speaking, or the way I'm communicating with you? You know, this interesting that we are having a little challenge with our microphones, that, you know, sometimes it doesn't take a lot to feel the disharmony. You know, you can't touch it, you can't see it really, but it feels like there's disharmony. And we bring that with us, by the way. We are those energetic fields. And so we have to really recognize what's going on here, you know? Am I trying to get something from this interaction with you? Am I trying to manipulate you? Do I have a second agenda in what's going on here? Or am I, you know, seeing this transaction between us, this communication between us as an opportunity to be a blessing in our relationship, to be a blessing to the energy of the universe, to be a blessing, to be a beneficial presence? And if we're not asking ourselves that question, we may just be showing up in unskillful ways. And if we do, we bam it, like Linda would say. We bless it, we see it, we allow it to be as it is, we release it, and we move on. And the next time we show up, we try to do a little bit better. We try to do a little bit better. We cultivate the capacity for conscious communication and action when we're in relationship with each other. And it's not that we just do it once, We get an opportunity to do it every single now moment, over and over and over again. I remember once we were in a meeting in another spiritual community, and one of the people was being a little mean-spirited. She caught herself, you'll remember this, she caught herself being mean-spirited, and then she says, well, I know how to be conscious, but right now I don't want to be. Okay, all right, that's okay. That's all right. And then we do over. So in the newsletter this month, if you've had an opportunity to read it, this is from our author that we're working with, Gary Zukov, Spiritual Partnership, and he says, basically paraphrasing him, basically the talk series that we've chosen for this whole month is an invitation to learn ways to love, trust, and heal so that we can move through life in an empowered way, so that we have an empowered heart, that we create harmony, we know how to cooperate with each other, we know how to share, and we have reverence for life because we set an intention for that to be the way we show up in the world. That's the whole premise that we're going to be working with this entire month. So it requires us to live an examined life. And I love, we're working often with the work of Robert Holden, seen on Oprah several times, and he's written this wonderful little book, Happiness Now. It's easy, and it's got lots of, this is how you do it in it. So if you are looking for ways to do it, this will help you. But I ran across something in here that really struck me and I thought was perfect for today. He says, toward the end of his life, English philosopher Aldous Huxley gave an interview to a young journalist who was eager to extract gems of wisdom from this great man. This is the man that wrote the book Perennial Philosophy. Very intellectual philosopher. When asked to sum up his lifetime's work, Huxley paused for a moment and then he smiled. And he said, well, it's a little bit embarrassing to have been concerned with the human problem all of my life, and to find out at the end that I have no more to offer by way of advice than try to be a little bit kinder. Try to be, this is from the man that has written tons of philosophical books, heady stuff, and it boils down to one thing. Try to be a little bit kinder, folks. Be a little bit more aware when you show up. I just loved that. Boy, if we could leave here today and that's our mantra, okay, Judy, try to be a little bit kinder. That's all we'd have to do, isn't that the truth? So this idea that it's a choice, we can just try to be a little bit kinder. And I like the word try because it gives us permission to examine the way we're showing up and have a do-over if we've made a misstep along the way, if we're not showing up quite as skillfully as we'd like to. Give us an opportunity to have a redo sometime. I need lots of redos. My life is about redos, but I try to, show up each time a little bit better in the redoing. You know what I'm saying? So it's a simple idea, try to be a little bit kinder, and it's a very powerful teaching. One of the most powerful things I ever heard from a platform was from a simple man at another spiritual community, and it was an invitation. When we speak, or when we act, make sure that what you're about to say and what you're about to do meets these 3 criteria. Is it kind? Is it true? And is it necessary? And let me tell you, if you use those 3 items to gauge your actions and to gauge the words that you speak, now you can have all kinds of thoughts. Let's see if you can monitor it before it pops out. I'm serious. That's a practice. Right speech begins with right thought. But at least until we get that down pat, we can at least put the filter on so that when it pops out, it's kind, it's loving, it's true, and it's necessary. I love that idea. Because when we're conscious and we show up in our relationships with each other in a conscious way, and we're communicating from the level of our being and take responsibility for who we are, for what we say, what we do, when we take responsibility for that, guess what? It reinforces our relationships. It doesn't cause them to split apart. Triangulate is the psychological word, where you spin off over here with another person, everybody's gossiping about that one. Been there? Done that? Yeah. Yeah. One of the Buddhist principles, don't create disharmony. Don't create disharmony. Take responsibility for the way you show up and the stuff that you do, see? Spiral dynamics is one of the things that we use in our leadership training here at Common Ground. Where's Stacy? There she is. Stacy's in that process right now. And one of the key components of what we teach here and what we try to model here from the platform and in the way we show up is something called POA. POA, Stacy, right? If we can always remember to be polite, open, and the word is autocratic, but what it means is take responsibility. If we can be polite with each other, who can't be polite? All it requires is taking a breath and reworking the way it shows up so that it comes out kind and loving and gentle and not just pops out in a mean-spirited way. Polite, open, and taking responsibility for what we say and do. And so in the Buddhist tradition, there is this idea, don't lie. Don't slander each other. Don't cause disharmony, whether it's in a family, whether it's in a relationship with somebody, a group of friends, whether it's community, and I know that's happening sometimes in communities. Don't be impolite. Don't be rude to each other. Don't be abusive. Don't use abusive speech, inflammatory speech. Don't gossip about each other. Don't gossip. And if we can just sort of hang with those ideas, those don't do these things, then when we show up, we're more likely to show up in a refined way. It's a simple idea. We've got to pay attention. Well, who's been paying attention to the political process? We've got another opportunity next week. A lot of political stuff going on right now. Well, I got news for you. If everything that we're seeing on both sides of the aisle were to subscribe to true, kind, and necessary, they'd have nothing to say. None of them. Yeah. Not any of them. Not any of them. If they would use the filter of truth, kindness, and necessary, it would show up in a way different way. It would show up in a way different way. And I want to say the same thing with reality TV. If people were being mean to each other and gossiping and saying abusive things to each other, who'd watch? We seem to get some sort of vicarious pleasure out of watching this kind of interaction, I guess because we don't give ourselves permission to do that with each other, right? But we want to watch it. We have choices about where we place our attention. We have choices about what we listen to. Not only do we have choices about what we do ourselves, but we have choices about where we place our attention and what we allow to come. I know some of you have told me that you're not watching any of this political stuff because it's too disturbing. It's too disturbing. All of it is disturbing. And so you're protecting yourselves by not, I noticed on Facebook, somebody said, I'm waiting till the election is over, so I'm getting myself off Facebook because I'm sick and tired of all of this rhetoric that's coming from both sides of the aisle. You understand what I'm saying? So this idea, if it can't be useful or beneficial, just stay quiet. Just be still. Don't do anything. Don't take action. If you can't be beneficial and useful, just be silent, be quiet, be present without having to bring forth any words or any actions, see? Because what I know, and this is true in my life, and it's true in my awareness of relationships in this community and out into the world, different kinds of communication and different kinds of actions cause different results. It's just a fact. And so it's so important for us to be able to see the way, all we can do is take responsibility for ourselves. That's it. We can't take responsibility for anybody else. But we can take responsibility for the way we respond when somebody doesn't follow one of those precepts. You know, when somebody lies to us or they're abusive with us, we can take responsibility for how we respond to that. And part of it is, we got to be very careful. We have to be careful enough in the way we show up that we recognize what we're about to say or about to do. Here's the key word: before it happens, not after. Not after it's come out. To take a breath before the reaction, so that we're not reacting but responding in the moment. Big difference. So I put this rose up here today because I want to tell you a story about communication. About communication. So a couple of days ago in the wee hours of the morning, I got a phone call from my granddaughter. She's I don't know how old she is, Mom, 25, 26, somewhere in that range. Young woman, and the phone rang at 3 in the morning. Not a good thing. I was very panicked to get a phone call from her at that time of day. Turns out that she was calling for support because the friend, her very, very best friend, who she considers a sister, her mother overdosed and died. And she needed me to be a support for her, my granddaughter, and this family that I know very, very, very well. And so it was a difficult experience, and my granddaughter was very upset. And as I was driving over to meet my granddaughter in the parking lot near where these folks live, I said my mantra, which Diane asked me about the other day. See, I don't know how to be with a girl whose mother has OD'd and died. I don't know how to be with that. I've never done that before. I have no idea how to be present with that. And so my mantra, no matter what I come in contact with, is, okay, I don't have to worry about what I say or do, because this energy of God, this divine energy, is right in front of me, and it's paving the way. It's removing all the obstacles. It's making the path straight for me, so that when I get there, I will know how to communicate, to be useful, to be beneficial, to be present with the situation. And because my little self, I have no idea how to do this. So we get there, and it's the coroner's there, and the police are there, and all this stuff, and the mother's going to have an autopsy because of the circuit. It's just a mess. I know this little girl very well. She was like another granddaughter to me for about 12 years. And her mother had this history from before she was born. So her entire life history was about this. So when it came time for them to remove the body from the house, her father, who was just a mess and also suffers from similar addiction, her father and a little girl who is 2.5 years out of rehab herself, and this family has lost a son 3 years ago to overdose. So this is a traumatic, crisis-filled family. This disease is really something tragic. And so, not wanting the husband and the daughter to see the body being removed from the house, we walked around to a park in this area, in this apartment complex. And as we were all standing there blowing our noses and being sad and crying, literally out of the shadows, out of the bushes, appears a young man who didn't look like he belonged behind a gated community in Irvine. He was wearing one of, I think my kids call it a wife beater t-shirt, tattoos all over, rather unusual facial hair. Now, what someone looking like that at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning is doing, wandering around, just up to guessing. But he walked up to the group as if it was middle of the day, and he said, "Anybody got a cigarette?" And of course everybody was smoking, and so they shared. And then he says, "I got a light." And and here this trauma going on. And so they lit the cigarette, and then he started chatting. And a little girl said, "I don't mean any disrespect, but my mother just died." And he was kind of stunned, but he stayed, and he stayed propped up against the trash can and just smoking his cigarette. And the circle was kind of uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable, I just have to say. My first judgment was fear. I had no idea what this was about. So the circle kind of did this, and he was back there. So we're protecting each other, right? We've got the circle heading this way. Finally, he left. Good luck, sorry for your loss, that kind of thing. Less than 5 minutes later, he reappeared, literally out of who knows where, the bushes, literally, and he was carrying, this is so bizarre, he was carrying a long stem red rose, fresh as you could imagine, wrapped in cellophane. And he walked up to the group, handed it to my granddaughter, she handed it to the little girl, and he said, "Can I say a prayer in Spanish?" And we're all just going like, what? You know, and we're saying, of course. So we made this bigger circle, we included him this time, and he said this beautiful prayer in Spanish. I understand enough Spanish to know what he was saying. He was asking for forgiveness for sins. He was asking for comfort and solace for the daughter, the little girl. And then he ended the prayer with, you know, in the name of Jesus Christ. And I thought, oh my God. And then he disappeared. He left. Now this is communication. This is communication, folks. This person that you would probably never even say hello to on the street was a beneficial presence, brought tremendous comfort, tremendous healing. She took the rose and put it on the bed where her mother died, took her last breath. This is what conscious communication in action looks like. So as you leave here today, I just would like to remind you that if nothing else touches you about what I've said today, take home the wise words of that man who was this quintessential philosopher. Just try to be a little bit kinder today.